Got it. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Solutions for Plastic Pollution. We are prioritizing reuse in Virginia. This is a webinar being hosted by the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network, featuring Miriam Gordon from Upstream Solutions, Jennifer Congdon from Beyond Plastics, and Grace Lee from ReThink Disposable. We did want to give you a little background on the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network in case you're not familiar with us. Katie, can you do the next slide? There we go. Okay, so the Virginia Plastic Prevention Network was started back in 2020, about a little over a year and a half ago. Our mission was to promote and facilitate coordination, collaboration, and communication with groups working around the Commonwealth of Virginia on the issue of plastic pollution. We wanted to make sure that no one was reinventing the wheel, that our groups all around the state could help each other out when resources were available. And since resources are generally limited in this field, we wanted to try to make it easier on everyone. So myself, Christina Trapani with Ecomaniac Company, Katie Register with Clean Virginia Waterways of Longwood University, with support from the Virginia Coastal Zone Management Program, put together the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network. This is actually part of our Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. And Katie is going to talk a little bit about the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, or background.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Those of you who have been attending our Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention meetings, our monthly meetings over the last year, knew that this Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan was in production. It was published just a few weeks ago. You can download it at that website that you see there. And the reduction plan has 4 major goals, as you can see there. Consumer debris, which is the biggest one. That's the stuff that we use for just a few minutes, and it ends up, mostly these are land-based sources of debris that end up in the environment inappropriately. The other 3 major goals are derelict fishing gear, that's nets, crab pots, clam nets, microplastics, and then the 4th major goal is abandoned and derelict vessels, boats, mostly fiberglass. So the plan was put together with the leadership of the Coastal Zone Management Program with tons and tons of stakeholders. And we will be talking about the plan in some detail at our January 18th meeting. So please sign up, make sure that you attend that. We're going to go deeper into the strategies that are part of the plan, and then talk a little bit about how organizations and local governments and schools and businesses in Virginia can engage in implementation of the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. So that's just a real quick overview that it's available. Please download it and join us in January for more information.
Thanks, Katie. So today we've got 2 panel discussions. Our first is going to be prioritizing source reduction in policy. We did have to do a little bit of switching around on the order of our panel discussions today, but we're still going to get all this great information out to you today. Our second panel will be the case for prioritizing reduce and reuse over plastics bans. So I want to introduce you to our first 2 panelists. Miriam Gordon from Upstream Solutions started her career 30 years ago, helping communities clean up hazardous waste and reduce toxic exposure. Midway, she decided to focus on preventing pollution and waste before it starts. For the last 15 years, Miriam has been a lead strategist and thought leader in the plastic pollution waste reduction movement. Today, she leads coalitions in launching cutting-edge policies and programs to end the throwaway culture. Miriam has developed several programs that demonstrate that pollution prevention is good for business, including California's Clean Boating Program and Clean Water Fund's ReThink Disposable program, which you will hear about today. Working upstream in the system of consumption and waste is her happy place. Miriam, thank you so much for being here. Our second speaker in our first panel is Jennifer Congdon with Beyond Plastics. She is the Deputy Director at Beyond Plastics. She is a nonprofit management and environmental policy expert with 20 years of experience. She served 3 New York governors in appointed leadership positions and has led numerous organizations to reach fundraising and growth goals, including New York Public Interest Research Group, Natural Resources Defense Council, Youth Ministries for Peace and Justice, and Bethlehem Children's School. Jennifer launched her environmental career as a New York Public Interest Research Group student activist. She worked closely with Judith Enck to launch Beyond Plastics in 2019. Miriam, take it away.
Great. Let me find the share screen function. Okay, thank you so much. Can you see my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Cool. So I guess all my introductory stuff was going to go in the other panel. So I'll just start by introducing Upstream. We are a national NGO, and we were focused when we launched in 2003 entirely on policy and on holding producers responsible for the products that they generate that then become waste. And we believe that if you held producers responsible for the waste, that they would generate less of it, and that we could achieve all kinds of great design standards, like making it less toxic and more recyclable. But that isn't actually what has happened with producer responsibility laws for packaging. Over time, we found that they haven't achieved this reduction in the generation of waste. And when we started looking at plastics and packaging, we had looked at a whole variety of different kinds of wastes and helped pass in the US producer responsibility laws for all kinds of waste, from paint to electronics to mattresses, lighting. When we started looking at plastics and packaging, we kind of realized that what we needed was just to really focus on a whole paradigm shift, that collecting plastics and recycling them, they're not inherently recyclable, and that other materials, if we just focus on plastic, other materials would take their place, single-use materials. And we came to understand that the problem with plastic packaging was just the disposability problem, the single-use nature, and the throwaway culture altogether. And so we really went all in on the idea of having a whole set of policies and an entire organization focused on changing the throwaway culture. So that's when we branded ourselves as Upstream. We used to be the Product Policy Institute, and just went all in on the idea of reduce and reuse. And so we focus on reuse as a prime solution to not only to the plastic pollution problem, but it's a climate solution, it's a waste solution. Changing our throwaway culture is important for creating a planet that can sustain a population of 7.5 billion people and growing. So historically, from a policy perspective, in the US and across the world, the focus on waste and on plastics has been to recycle more and make things more compostable, even in some places to incinerate and capture the energy, and change the design, make products more compostable, more recyclable. But we have found, and I think all of us are coming to the understanding collectively in the environmental community, that plastics and foodware, they're not inherently recyclable. I mean, the China ban on export of, on taking other countries' hard to recycle plastics and paper really unveiled the myth that these products, particularly foodware, are recyclable, and that we could recycle our way out of a wasteful system. And we're also seeing with the whole design change thing, like moving products to become, sorry, I didn't mean to do that, moving products to become more compostable or banning plastic, itself, making products plastic free, these things don't work generally because compostable products, compostable packaging actually doesn't create very good quality compost. And in many cases can add a lot of contaminants and just dilute the quality of the compost. Commercial composters, really what they want is organic waste, is landscape waste and food. Anyway, all this I was going to cover in the other in the case for reuse. So let me just move on to policies that shift from focusing on diversion from landfill to policies that actually focus on the top two R's in the waste management hierarchy: reduce and reuse. And I just want to say that in order to accomplish these goals of reduction and reuse, those goals have to be standalone policy goals. They can't be part of policies that say we're going to have policies that encourage recycling and reuse all as one policy goal. You have to have separate enforceable metrics for reduction and reuse. Otherwise, all that gets accomplished is more and more continued focus on diversion from landfill. So I just wanted to just like paint a picture for you of what it would be like to live in a city where you have had policies that have driven us towards reuse at the community level. And that might be a city where all restaurants serve on real plates, real cutlery, and with real cups, like McDonald's does in McCafes all across Europe, where to-go coffee is provided in reusable containers, and same thing with delivered meals. And that's that lower picture on the lower left is me and some friends this week enjoying a meal delivered in reusable containers. I live in San Francisco, and Dispatch Goods works with many restaurants in San Francisco, so that's an option. Or where you go to the ballpark or a music festival and everyone's drinking out of reusable cups. And you can go to the grocery store and get cleaning products, personal care products, all kinds of products in reusable containers, or have them delivered to your home. And in this city, thousands of people are employed in the delivery, pickup, and cleaning and stocking logistics of these reuse systems. Litter and solid waste costs are down, community pride is up, and none of these innovations required you to bring anything reusable yourself. It was provided by the business, and community leaders and policy makers worked to create the policy conditions for this thriving reuse economy. Well, that's what the policies that we are recommending and that are in our policy playbook that I hope we can share with you. That's what these policies are aimed at creating. And I just wanted to say that the Virginia Executive Order 77, it does create an opportunity to innovate some of the policies that I'm going to throw at you like a fire hose of policy approaches right now. So our first strategy is to reduce as much single-use or throwaway packaging as possible. And there's a number of ways to do that. You can ban single-use products where it leads to a reuse option, like plastic bags that then lead to reusable bags. Or, as some states have done and some cities, ban single-use hotel toiletries and require that the hotel industry use bulk dispensers. Or instead of having beverage bottles at airports and government locations in single-use plastic, install refill stations. Another reduction strategy is to reduce single use is to enact accessories on request laws. This has become very important during COVID because many more people are doing takeout and delivery of prepared meals, and many of us are experiencing getting accessories like utensils and straws and napkins and condiment packets, not only that we don't need, but that never get used. They're not single use, they're no use, they're instant trash because we have these utensils at home, we have condiments at home and napkins, we don't need them. So to date, 2 states have enacted an accessories on request laws, California and Washington, and there are 56 local jurisdictions that have them. You can find them at our Skip the Stuff page on our website. Once we have reduced as much as possible, it's important to transition the rest to reusable and refillable. So that's our second set of strategies. And to do this, we recommend that when you have bottle bills or EPR, extended producer responsibility laws at the state level, that you build in sector-wide targets for reusable packaging. That means holding producers responsible for, say, in a bottle bill, achieving increasing levels of those bottles being refillable. So starting maybe with 10% within 5 years, and then and eventually transitioning our bottles on deposit to mostly refillables and increasing levels every few years. Another great strategy that is being enacted in cities and even countries across the world is to mandate that for on-site dining, only reusable foodware be used. As that McDonald's picture that I showed you from Europe, you can see that on the right side, I have pictures of what it looks like in Berkeley. Berkeley was the first to enact this law in the United States. And McDonald's in Berkeley is rolling out this reusable foodware program for on-site dining. Then you can do consumer charges for throwaway cups and containers, just like bag charges, so that instead of giving out disposable cups and containers for free, businesses that do takeout charge consumers for the throwaway cup or container and provide a reusable option as an alternative. And then there's another great place to start, which is at government facilities and government-sponsored events, where you can have targets for how many reusable cups you're going to have at government-sponsored events or facilities. And in workplaces, the country of Scotland and the Irish cities of Dublin and Cork have banned disposable cups in government workplaces. And procurement policies, government procurement policies are a great place to start on iterating reusables and mandating that agencies stop buying so much single-use stuff and have reusables for their events and for on-site dining and things like that. We have a sample policy, procurement policy in our policy playbook. The last strategies are, I'm just going to go through them pretty quickly, are to hold producers accountable for achieving reuse, as I mentioned early on, and Jennifer is going to talk more about extended producer responsibility and how to do that. Then also we encourage using a justice and equity lens in developing these policies, providing economic support and incentives for businesses. And Grace is going to talk about that today. And then our sixth strategy is we are still going to have disposable foodware. So we still want to add precautions for that foodware and make sure that if it's recyclable or compostable, that it is only specify that if your local waste system can actually recycle or compost those products. And we highly encourage banning groups of priority classes of chemicals and foodware that can harm us because they migrate out of the foodware into food and beverages. And we have recommended specific plastics that should be banned because they are harmful. All that's in our policy playbook. And lastly, as we switch to reusables, we want to make sure that they too are non-toxic. So there's whole lists of chemicals that need to be banned from both our disposable and reusable foodware. And so that's kind of, I think that is, one last thing. I was thinking about what might be doable in Virginia, and I wanted to highlight the policy of only reuse for on-site dining. accessories only on request, government agency procurement policies, and some of these precautions for disposable foodware, including a polystyrene ban, as well as the other things I discussed. So I think that would be the sum of my policy recommendations. And I wanted to let you know that if you want to learn more about the chemicals and the materials that we suggest being banned in order to encourage safer food packaging, disposable food packaging, and reusable foodware, we do have this webinar that is going to happen tomorrow, where we'll be diving deeper into that, and I can post a link into the chat. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. Jennifer, before you get started, I did want to remind everybody that to put your questions in the chat box, and we are going to have some time for Q&A between panels or after each panel, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. And next up is Jennifer with
Thank you.
non-plastics. Thanks, Jennifer.
Thank you, Christina. And thank you, Miriam, for that wonderful setup for EPR in general, and why extended producer responsibility is such an important policy. And also, Miriam's so good at painting the picture of what's possible. So I loved all like imagine the city where, you know, these things happen. So thank you, Miriam. And then one other quick point of interest, I love the coastal management program. I'm a policy nerd. And so a shout out to all of my federal coastal consistency people on the call. It's a little known and very powerful and important program. So thank you for inviting me to speak today. Some of you on this call may know, and others may not know, that this weird name, EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility, is all the rage right now in state houses across the country. It's a terrible name, but it's a great policy. And we've had a few states, Maine and Washington, passed laws last year, and we were seeing these pop up all over. And so policymakers around the country know the name EPR. And as Miriam said, people think that with an EPR for packaging bill, that you would see reductions in packaging. But a group of policy experts who have their eyes on this stuff got together this summer, and we convened a group in Bennington, where Beyond Plastics is located. And when we looked at all of the information, we saw that it doesn't necessarily translate to packaging reduction. It is important for producers to take responsibility for packaging, but that we really wanted to work on a piece of model legislation, a model policy that would really get the reductions that people think they're getting with this type of policy. So I'm going to walk through what we came up with. And I just want to say this model legislation represents hundreds of collective hours of research, spirited debate, drafting, consultations, and compromise. And we really did gather some of the nation's leading policy experts on solid waste, and have consulted with others who couldn't make it afterwards to develop this model policy. So first of all, why EPR? So we are facing a plastic pollution crisis, as this group knows. 15 million metric tons of plastic waste is washing into the ocean each year, and that number is expected to triple by 2050 if we don't take action at every level of government. Environmental justice is intricately linked to plastic pollution and waste issues. When packaging is not reduced, refilled, and reused, it really ends up littered, entering water bodies, and or it's sent to landfills or incinerators. And these are primarily located in low-income communities and communities of color. And finally, last but not least, packaging, as we all know, is excessive. It's full of toxins, and recycling is broken. So EPR really holds producers financially responsible for managing the packaging waste that essentially they create. As consumers, we have some choice, but we don't have a ton of choice. And really, we need to force design changes to make packaging safer, recyclable, and really to reduce it altogether. So next, there we go. So why should states act? So the United States has 4% of the world's population, but we use 17% of the world's energy, 24% of the world's natural resources. We create 12% of the world's solid waste. And according to a recent study, we are actually the largest generator of plastic waste in the world. Many states have economies the size of countries and can use EPR policies to contribute to solving the global plastic pollution crisis. So the main features of this legislation, there's a lot of pieces. We had a lot of different policy details to wade through, but I think these three are the really big, important pieces. So first of all, as Miriam rightly pointed out, the most important thing is to reduce packaging from the beginning. So that is really the focus of this policy. So focus first on reduction, and that is through requirements, rates, and dates. So it's like, reduce it by 25% in 5 years, like that kind of very strict in legislation reductions. And those reductions can be met through elimination of non-reusable packaging or shifting to reuse and refill systems. Also, as Miriam mentioned, we eliminate toxics. And I think that this is an often overlooked but very important part of EPR, because if we're going to get a truly circular economy, packaging has to be free of toxic and harmful substances so that those materials aren't being brought back into the recycling system. So this bill bans high priority toxic substances and certain materials such as polystyrene, PVC, and polycarbonate. And this bill also drives design changes. So we use eco-modulated fees and other design standards and labeling to really increase reuse, recycling, recyclability, and recycled content in the packaging. So this model policy covers all packaging. Many EPR bills that we've seen covered only residential packaging, but we at industrial, commercial, and institutional packaging waste is actually 60% of the waste stream. That's an estimate, but it's roughly that. And so we felt like it was important to include that. So it's packaging found around the everyday products that you would buy in a store or restaurant or online. All the packaging used to transport that packaging to the store, to your home, to businesses, and then both waste generated in single and multifamily units, and then again, the industrial, commercial, and institutional waste. So here I will walk you now through some of the details of the policy that we developed. Reduce and reuse, again, creates reduction requirements that can be met through elimination of non-reusable packaging. And shifting to reuse and refill systems. And design changes. So for all remaining non-reusable packaging, requirements for recyclability or recycled content, and we have that in the bill, and those are ramped up over time. For recyclability and recycling, this is very important. We narrowly define those to exclude any kind of burning or incineration or chemical recycling. And that is an extremely important thing, because if that's happening, it really is not recycling. And also our definitions include accessibility requirements. So something is recyclable in your state only if a certain percentage of the population has access to that recycling. And then again, getting toxics out of packaging. So banning high priority toxic substances to make them safer and more recyclable. Sorry. So now let's talk a little bit about the producers and what their requirements would be under this model policy. So they would be required to label their products so that consumers can clearly understand recyclability and recycled content, and that those labels can only be used if they meet the accessibility criteria that's set up in the program. And then producers would be responsible for paying eco-modulated fees. So based on the type of material, and then environmental criteria such as recyclability or recycled content. So the lowest fees would be assessed on the least harmful types of packaging, and there is no fee in this program for reusable or refillable packaging. The funding piece, to talk about that, so the way we anchor the collection of the fees is by first doing a needs and justice and equity assessment. And those assessments provide the foundation for investing the fees that are collected. They would essentially identify opportunities and barriers to reuse and refill systems and to recycling, and justice and equity concerns about where certain processing facilities are located, and living wages and in the industry and things like that. So we do these assessments, we collect the fees, and then those fees, once the administrative fees come out of it, the funding is then distributed based on the box on the bottom right. So 50% for recycling infrastructure and education, 25% for reuse and refill infrastructure and education, and then 25% for payments directly to municipalities or political subdivisions and Native American tribes. And that funding is for cost recovery for running recycling and waste management systems, and also for system improvements. And those entities are eligible for funding only if they're meeting the recycling requirements in their jurisdiction. Next, I'll talk about what's called the Producer Responsibility Organization. So most EPR systems set up what's called a Producer Responsibility Organization, and different systems have different requirements and assignments, duties of what's called the PRO. And so under this program, the PRO is a nonprofit registered 501c3, and the state environmental agency contracts with them to do the work. And we think of them more in our model as sort of like an accounting firm. So they're responsible for collecting fees, holding the fees in an account, distributing funds based on the needs assessment, collecting data, and compiling reports. And importantly, the PRO would be barred from lobbying, making campaign contributions, and suing the state, because environmentalists around the country have learned the hard way with some EPR programs that those are necessary. So there's strong transparency built into the system through labeling and reporting. There's oversight of the PRO by the environmental agency. But then we also recommend establishing an Office of Inspector General within the state environmental department to be the entity that has the final oversight on the program altogether. As as solid waste nerds, we love reporting and information. And frankly, there's not a ton of information available about waste. And there's, a lot of times it takes years to compile. And so we always feel a little bit behind on the most up-to-date information. So a big piece of this model policy is getting information that we all think we need to create even better policies in the future. So in the waste and recycling bucket, waste characterization studies, litter surveys, lists of materials that can be recycled in the state, inbound, outbound, recyclable materials, what's coming in and out of the state, what's being sold on the market, what actually has a market for it. In the producers and packaging bucket, the basic stuff that you would expect in a bill like this. So, lists of participating producers, amounts of packaging, type sold within the state, baseline, and then annual numbers of waste being generated in the state, and reusable and reuse and refill numbers as well. And then the program in progress, so description of the grants and progress towards the benchmarks. So we also recommend that states that don't have a bottle return law, for those states that you pass one, because deposit systems for beverage containers really are the most effective way to ensure that bottles and cans and the glass is getting recycled. And for states that already do have a bottle bill or bottle deposit law, we recommend that you update it to add reuse and refill requirements. So how would you use this model policy? So first of all, it's a model policy. So we recommend that you tailor it. It should make sense for your state. There may be things that, you couldn't get passed in your state or just don't make sense. And so, obviously we don't recommend making big changes because we've thought a lot about how the system works together. But we know that local advocates they know best about what's happening on the ground. And then work to get it introduced. Work with a sponsor who's committed to getting it passed in this legislative session. And you can also use the policy to drive the discussion and counter any bad bills that are being proposed, because we do expect there to be a lot of discussion around EPR this legislative session. I think that everybody recognizes, the industry, policymakers and advocates recognize that we're at a crisis point with packaging and we need to do something about it. And then finally, I encourage you to connect, and you can connect with me, and Miriam is also going to be working on this legislative session. We are going to be connecting advocates who are moving these policies forward in their states, so that we can all have real-time discussions about what constitutes a good or bad EPR policy. So with that, I will end. Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. Wow, we have so many questions for you, and we'll get through as many as we can. We have about
we've got about
minutes.
5 minutes. Yeah.
5 minutes. So if you can keep your answers brilliant and succinct as possible. So one question is about, both of you mentioned labeling requirements and local access to recycling. How would that work for a national brand to be able to label things that meet the needs of so many different communities, even in the state of Virginia?
Well, I would say there's some things that are just very easily recyclable, and there's markets for them nearly all over the country. So that's that's the easy stuff. There's probably some other harder things, but I would say a national brand, they might want to do exactly what we're hoping, which is reconsider, right? If they're using some sort of packaging material that is not readily recyclable, maybe it's time to rethink that material or rethink the delivery system for that product altogether and try a reuse and refill system. So that's my short answer.
Okay, Miriam, do you have anything to say about that too?
Well, I do think that we need to change the labeling laws for a lot of things that have the chasing arrows on them that makes it seem as though products are recyclable. They're not actually recyclable. And so so I would encourage you to look at California's SB 343 that was enacted in 2021, the Truth in Labeling Bill, because that is quickly becoming the standard. It's going to change. It's going to ensure that products that are labeled as recyclable are actually recyclable. New Jersey is looking at going that route and copying the California bill. So I think it's very important to ensure that the labeling is accurate.
Great, thank you. The next question is about reusable cups and containers in restaurants, sit-down restaurants. You mentioned in Europe, fast food restaurants serve you coffee in a real mug. What is that? Do those restaurants now have dishwashers and more staff? And are there more costs? Basically, how does that work? I know it's a big question for a quick answer.
I'm just going to say, let's save some time and wait for Grace's presentation because it's all about that. It's going to, but it works, and Grace is going to talk about it, why and how it saves businesses money. It reduces waste, it reduces disposables, it has all kinds of benefits, but the primary one is that it's good for business, saves them money.
Great. Okay, thank you. We will wait for that then. Another question. How does online shopping and near instant delivery contribute to this problem? And can we solve the problem by redirecting people to local shopping?
I am a big believer in systemic change. So we have to, our individual shopping habits obviously matter. We all have to take responsibility for what we do in the world. But there's, sometimes we need something quickly from Amazon, or sometimes there's just, we often can't control what's coming our way. And I think Miriam so eloquently showed in her presentation that in these true reuse systems, you're not even responsible for bringing the reusable item. I have shelves full of containers that I bring to my co-op to refill. It's a huge burden on me. I'm going to do it. But in these true reuse and refill systems, it makes it easy for consumers to do that on their own. And so I would say, look beyond even that, our personal shopping habits, to what can we do on a larger scale.
Great, thank you.
I'd like to pile on that from a policy perspective. So in order to change how products are delivered to us, what we really need is to mandate that producers that producers deliver these products, the things that we want and need, in reusable packaging. And so it's possible to shift the whole Amazon paradigm through policy by saying, percentage of transport packaging has to be reusable, by a certain date, and increase that over time. So I'd encourage you as advocates to look at not just EPR, not just producer responsibility, but direct legislation that says, for transport packaging, we want to start with 10% in the first 2 years of the packaging used by this industry will be reusable, and then 20% 2 years later, and 30%. Make it happen through policy.
Great, thank you. And then maybe this will be our last question. What are your thoughts about fees on plastic shopping bags versus bans? And do both of you support the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act?
Ban all the way, and yes for the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act.
So I think I agree that all plastic bags have to be banned, because I come from California, and we made the mistake. We had the first state plastic bag bill, and it has a fee on the paper, and it bans disposable plastic, but it allows some plastics to be considered reusable if it meets certain criteria. And what has happened is we've gotten thicker plastic shopping bags that consumers treat as disposable, but it meets the criteria for what's reusable in our flawed law. So I think that the better version of this law would be ban all plastic shopping bags, because consumers never treat plastic bags really, truly, especially flexible plastic film bags are never treated as reusable. So ban all of them. Let's get better reusables, non-plastic reusables. And then, but we still want to, but the shift will be to paper. And we still want people to have to pay for that disposable product, because that's what incentivizes them to bring a reusable.
Fabulous.
I agree
Well,
100%.
Plastic
Yeah.
Pollution Act, definite thumbs up. I mean, it's not perfect, but it has a national bag ban. It has a national bottle bill. It has a national producer responsibility framework. None of these things are perfect. There's some reuse built into some of it, especially with funding for, in the bottle bill, funding for the refillable infrastructure. But if we get a national bill, and it doesn't preempt state laws. So if we get something national, it's going to cover the states that aren't going to do anything to take action. And the states that will take action, we can do better versions of each one of those things, of the bag law, of the bottle bill, of the producer responsibility, of, you know, all of it. That's my take on it.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you so much. I wish we could get to all the questions, but a reminder, this is being recorded. We'll share a link with everyone who signed up. I also want to mention there's some great links that people are putting into the chat. So make sure that you check that out too. And at this point, it's back to Christina to introduce the second panel.
Thank you. Thank you, Miriam and Jennifer. So our next panel is going to be the case for prioritizing reuse and reduce and reuse over plastics bans. And we haven't met Grace Lee yet. So I'm going to introduce you to her now. She'll be our second panel speaker. Grace Lee joined the ReThink Disposable program team in 2018 and is the ReThink Disposable program director. Grace has worked with hundreds of restaurants to lighten their load on the planet and has helped food businesses save hundreds of dollars per year by prioritizing reuse. Grace has led her program's growing commitment to supporting social equality and small business owners. And for the past year, she's also led a reusables initiative with the Berkeley Unified School District to completely transform their school meal program from relying on compostable and plastic disposables to all reusable foodware. Grace oversees her team's partnerships and implementation of ReThink work throughout the Bay Area and is gearing up for the program's national expansion. Before working with Clean Water Fund, Ms. Lee was the Outreach Programs Director at the Bay Foundation, a national estuary program charged with restoring Santa Monica Bay, and played in an all-drum experimental punk band. Thank you, ladies. Miriam, take it away.
Okay, so one of the problems with asking me to help design a panel is that you're going to get me more than once. But I guess the reason that I wanted to speak both to the policy and to the case for reuse is that, you know, really we are the only organization in the US that is wholly, this is what we do. All we do is focus on building the case for reuse and then trying to get reuse to be normalized through policy, through culture changing communications, and through a business innovation program. So that's why you're hearing so much from me. I wanted to say that I also come from a background of working in California in state policy, and worked on our marine debris reduction plan, both iterations of them, the one in 2008 and the one in 2018, and have been sort of beating the drum for source reduction, for as a solution to marine debris. What we need to do is really stop the generation of single-use products and focus more on reduce and reuse. So I'm kind of a repetitive like that record that just, that you can't, the needle is on the record and it's going round and round and says, you hear the same thing over and over again. But that's because I really believe it and know that we have the facts to show that reuse wins. It is a solution for plastic pollution, for our waste crisis, and it's a climate solution. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. So, Upstream has believed for a long time since our founding that we could never recycle or compost our way out of this problem. And we just need to change the delivery systems and how we deliver products to consumers. We need to, we heart reuse. And I think I talked about, changing the throwaway model. One of the reasons that we focus first on foodware is that if you look at, on balance, most of the research shows, whether it's a coastal cleanup day research or litter studies, what we are finding is that about 70% of the litter on streets and entering our waterways, the macro product, it's disposable food and beverage packaging. So if we want to solve plastic pollution in our waterways, if we want to solve litter, also I'll talk about climate, we really need to prioritize the food and beverage packaging sector. I talked a bit about how we can't recycle and compost our way out of this problem. But let's look at that myth that we can recycle our way out of this. Most recovered materials that end up getting recycled are downcycled. So it doesn't turn off that they're made into other products, not the product that they were originally. So that doesn't turn off the tap on the use of virgin plastic or virgin materials in the product, in the original product. And that has all kinds of environmental justice implications for the communities that live near the plastics extraction, production, and disposal facilities. All of them are suffering the impact. So we really need to turn off the tap, and we can't do that with downcycling. Foodware is too dirty to recycle, and there's great research from Department of Environmental Quality in Oregon. They looked at like hundreds of studies on recyclable and recycling and found that it's only better for the environment in 56% of the cases. So it's not uniformly true that recyclable is better for the environment. Compostable is also a challenge. I live in a state that has gone all in on the idea of composting packaging, but the reality is that only 14 out of the 182 commercial compost facilities in California process compostable plastic. And when they do it as a separate stream because it creates a contaminated product. And foodware and food packaging is not really what composters want because it doesn't add any nutrient value to their compost, and it actually creates a diluted, contaminated product which has lower resale value. And the fact is that most compostable packaging ends up in landfill anyway, where it has 30 times higher greenhouse gas impact than it would if it was composted. So we can't recycle and compost our way out of it. What happens when we just ban plastic to solve the problem? Well, we got a whole bunch of what we call regrettable alternatives. Bio-based plastics, aluminum, paper, wood, and bamboo, all of these alternative single-use products have a whole host of other environmental problems. So we're just shifting from one set of environmental problems with petroleum-based plastics to other problems with the other single-use materials. And so that is how we come to conclude that the problem isn't just plastic, the problem is single-use itself. And looking at this, so let's look at some of the environmental problems from a climate perspective. Products and their packaging are 44% of the consumption-based emissions in the U.S. Of greenhouse gas, of carbon, greenhouse gas, mostly carbon and greenhouse gases. And our one-way throwaway model not only has high climate impacts and energy impacts, it uses a lot of water and natural resources. Our food service industry is purchasing 1 trillion disposable food service packaging items each year. That results in 9 million tons of waste. 24 billion, they're spending $24 billion on disposables. And this results in businesses and communities spending $6 billion to manage all that waste, and a huge amount of litter, 20 billion pieces of litter that needs to be cleaned up, which is the responsibility of mostly of local government. And our estimate is that if we switch to a reuse economy for food service, we can avoid 86% of the disposables, create a lot of jobs, save $5 billion in the food service industry from not buying these disposables, save $5 billion in solid waste costs, and really avoid a lot of litter. So we wanted to see science, what does the science say about the environmental impacts of reusables versus disposable foodware? So we published recently the Reuse Wins report. And the first finding is that reuse beats single use by every environmental measure. So we looked at the general way that environmental impact is evaluated from a technical perspective is through life cycle analysis or life cycle assessment. And we looked at the LCAs for foodware. And out of the 14 studies that we evaluated, the little trophies show where the environmental benefits are. We're comparing different materials used for different products. And you can see that the trophies line up, the environmental wins line up more on the reusable side, on the left side, than on the disposable side. And so way more. So the wins are way more in favor, environmental benefits are way higher with reusables. When you look at, you can't look at any one life cycle assessment, but when you look at them as a group, on balance, the trend is that reuse wins. And they generally look at 14 different assessments or measures for environmental impact, from climate to water consumption to resource extraction to land impacts and pollution impacts. I just want to highlight two. So better for the environment through all of these measures, but in particular, reuse is better for the climate. And let's just look at cups, for example. The one of the LCAs shows that disposable paper, plastic, and bioplastic cups have 3 to 10 times higher greenhouse gas impacts than their reusable substitutes, ceramic, stainless steel, and glass. And I pulled out cups because that's just something that is one of the most used disposable products in the food service. Also, reuse is better for in terms of water footprint. So the LCAs that we looked at on balance show that using and washing one ceramic cup only 500 times only uses 53 gallons of water over the whole life cycle of the product, whereas the 500 paper cups that are replaced by the reusable, those 500 paper cups would have consumed 370 gallons of water. Now, most of the impact for the disposables is in the extraction and processing phase, and most of the impact for reusables is in the dishwashing, in the use phase. But over the entire phase, from cradle to grave, reusables have a lower, on balance, lower water footprint. Even Starbucks found that reuse would be better, and this analysis came out in 1999, and the results show they looked at reusable cups used in a cafe, and I'll just point to the bottom section of this graphic. It shows that, for example, if 10 reusable cups were used in a coffee shop per hour, you would have huge amounts of annual water savings, greenhouse gas reduction, and solid waste reduction. They also found that the reusable cups would save a lot of money for the cafes. And I am going to, and that tees up what Grace is going to be talking about, which is why reuse is a benefit from an economic perspective. So I'm going to turn off my sharing. So I want to turn it over to Grace now to talk about the economics.
Thanks, Miriam. Okay, let me share my screen now. All right, here we go. Can everyone see this all right?
Yes, looks great.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. Well, I'm really excited to share what we've been working on in California. So we have a lot to cover, so I'll jump right into it. I'll give a quick background of ReThink Disposable and Clean Water Fund, where we are now since inception. And I'm going to share just a few of my favorite case studies of businesses that we've worked with, looking at the environmental and economic cases for reuse. And a little bit about our process and how we approach restaurants and some common obstacles and barriers to reuse. Hopefully we'll have time for that because I want to save some time for questions. So just really quickly, ReThink Disposable is a program of Clean Water Fund. Clean Water Fund is a national nonprofit with 14 offices across the country. Our headquarters is in DC. And our California office is in Oakland, which is really the brunt of the program where it resides. But I'm actually calling in from Los Angeles, so we're all over the map. So ReThink Disposable actually started a decade ago and was created by Miriam Gordon, actually. And as you saw in one of her slides, before ReThink Disposable was even a glimmer, Clean Water Fund conducted a Bay Area-wide litter characterization study. So they looked at exactly what was going into the San Francisco Bay and found that, as you saw on the slide, 67%, almost 70% of the litter that was picked up in 4 cities throughout San Francisco Bay Area was food and beverage packaging. So to really get at the source of that waste, ReThink Disposable was started as a source reduction program, but also coupled with data analysis as well, which I'll get into that a little bit later. So the program relies on 3 facets. So the first one is to support policies that reduce foodware packaging, single-use foodware packaging. Also public engagement to really push that reuse, to make reuse the norm and cool again. And also, the thrust of our work is actually working directly with restaurants and institutions to untether them from single-use disposable packaging and move them on to a way to prioritize reuse for on-site dining. So thus far, since 2011, we've worked with 260 businesses, 13 of which are institutions. So we work from small mom and pop coffee shops all the way to large academic and corporate campuses like Microsoft in Seattle and University of San Francisco. Currently, like Christine was saying, we're working with the Berkeley Unified School District. And what we've done thus far is that collectively, the 260 businesses that we've worked with are reducing 22 million pieces of disposable packaging every year. So this is on an ongoing basis, weighing 131 tons of waste. And on a per business level, we've found through our data impact and analysis, we've found that restaurants that work with Rethink Disposable to switch from disposable foodware to reusable typically have the opportunity to reduce the generation of 110,000 pieces of disposable foodware packaging, weighing up to 1,300 pounds. And we see across the board an average of a 60% reduction in the use of disposable packaging for their on-site dining. And this is kind of the most exciting part of the program that we've found, that businesses that we work with have the opportunity to save between $3,000 to $22,000 a year. And this takes into account, we look at if there are any increased expenses from labor, water use, or utilities. We look at any annual ongoing costs, and also upfront investments to set up for a reuse-centric operation. And this is the most exciting part about it, is that it is pro-environment and pro-business at the same time. So next I want to share with you some of these favorite case studies that I alluded to. So the first one, this is a picture of Stephanie Ayu. She is the owner of a Hawaiian barbecue place in the city of Alameda called Honolulu Barbecue. So when you walk in, you order at the counter and you sit down, and you get your food up at the counter and you sit down at your table. But everything on their menu was served in its own special disposable container. So they had 13 different disposable containers that they would have to repeatedly procure, like every 2 weeks, every month. So we worked with Stephanie because, as you can see, she was just throwing money into the trash, along with leftover food and things like that. We set her up with just $345 of an upfront investment to purchase all the reusables, so that she would become 100% reusable for dine-in. She ended up renting a dishwasher to support her new reuse operation, and spent about $160 a month to have the dishwasher serviced every month. Other than that, there was no labor impact to her business. So this is kind of an amazing win-win situation here. She was able to decrease her generation of disposable packaging by 110,000 pieces, weighing almost 2,000 pounds, and seeing a 58% reduction of disposable products used at her restaurant across the board. And even with the monthly dishwashing service, was able to save $1,272 every year. And actually, Stephanie, this year, because of her sustainable practices, she was able to, she won a Stop Waste Alameda County Business Efficiency Award. The next case study that I want to share is Hang Ten Boiler. So this is a popular place, in the city of Alameda, where you can order, crab. They steam it in a big bag and they bring everything on the table. But they were serving everything again in all disposables, even though you're sitting down in the restaurant to eat. So I love this story because it really shows how this program can really meet restaurant owners where they are, right? So it's not an all or nothing program. So with Mai, when we first approached her to go reusable, she was really overwhelmed with the thought of having to wash all of these dishes. Like, they're a really busy restaurant, hundreds of transactions a day. And we convinced her to switch over to one reusable item. And we came back 2 weeks later, and a lot of the fears of going reusable were just kind of like preconceived notions of what could go wrong by going reusable. She actually didn't even notice a difference by just trying that one thing, and decided to make a complete transition to reusables for all of her foodware. So Mai invested about more than $2,000 actually to purchase all of her reusables that you see here in this bottom right-hand picture. She even hired a new staff person to support dishwashing. And but she was still able to save on an annual basis almost $4,000 a year. So in other words, if she maintains, and if these businesses maintain their reuse practices, then they are able to see these levels of source reduction, waste reduction, and recoup some of these costs. I know water is such a big deal, right? So with reusables, right, you're using more water on site to wash all of the dishes. So I wanted to bring up Crispian Bakery as a case study for how the program also addresses some water use. So Crispian Bakery, they did just a simple switch from compostable plates to a real plate. And plastic cup and lid to a real glass for on-site dining. They, with just this simple change, along with reusable utensils, they are reducing their generation of 59,000 pieces of disposable packaging every year, weighing 1,000 pounds, and are able to save more than $1,700 a year. And this actually takes into account of installing a new dishwasher to support their reuse. And then also an increase of their water bill by $30 a month. When we interviewed the owner after the implementation of the reusables, they noted that installing a dishwasher actually improved labor efficiency. They had no need to hire additional staff. The water bill only increased by $30 a month, but the cost of the dishwasher installation and rental was offset by the savings earned from switching to reusables. So how do we get all of this work done? So I'm going to show you a little bit behind the scenes of our process here. So over the years, we've kind of honed our process down to a 9-step program. So ReThink Disposable is typically supported by contracts with our municipal partners. So cities and counties can hire ReThink Disposable to work with their business communities to switch them over to reusables. We also have foundation and grant funding, of course, as any nonprofit does to support the work. But we work with our municipal partners and other community-based organizations and business improvement districts to connect us to restaurants that want to participate in ReThink Disposable. So, right, starts with identifying good candidates. Then everything always starts with an observation of business practices. Before we even talk to anyone in the restaurant, we start with just observing what's happening at the restaurant, if there are any opportunities to target any disposable foodware packaging and switch them over to reusables. We work, then we approach the decision maker and we work with them to figure out their reuse plan. So how do we seamlessly integrate reusables into their operation? We do, and we try to do as much as possible for the business. So over the years, we've kind of have taken a lot of the control of the program, just so we don't see a lot of attenuation of our business participants. So we try to do everything for them, right? They're so busy. So we do the product research, we procure product for them. We activate prebates to offset the startup costs. So this is a really important part of the program, is that with each of those contracts that I mentioned, a large chunk of the budget goes back into the community to the businesses to help offset any type of expense for purchasing new reusables. It's typically around $300 to $500 per business that we offer. And if the business is owned by someone who identifies as a woman, or they're part of the LGBTQA community, or they are a minority group, or they are a Black-owned business, then that base incentive is always at least double. We then go into, after we buy all the stuff for the restaurants, we actually do the delivering and packing. We set up photo shoots so that the business owner and the staff can practice plating. And then we help push implementation forward. We also help with developing customer signage so that their customers know exactly what's going on and how to bus and not to accidentally take anything home, to leave everything at the place of business. And most importantly, through all of this this process, we actually track and quantify packaging reduction and also economic benefits of going to reuse. We have a library of case studies that show this quantification of results of going reuse. But this is a really important part of the program, because with our case studies, they're very useful in pushing policy and really having a proof of concept that going reuse will not put any business out of business. And then finally, we we wrap it up with a bow, and we work with the restaurant with awards and recognition to drive more customers to the business for their sustainable changes. I wanted to mention something else really exciting that we're working on currently. Someone actually mentioned it in the chat about the city of San Francisco. So we started a new training module or training model. We trained staff from the city of San Francisco's Department of Environment Now career development team. They are a multilingual team of business outreach associates. So we've trained these individuals to run Rethink Disposable throughout the city of San Francisco. So we have a goal of reaching 1,200 businesses throughout the city and adding an additional 55 Rethink business participants into our Hall of Fame. And this has been an amazing way to really grow our impact. So we're really active in California, extremely active in Northern California, and we're hoping to bring this model nationwide so we can train, and just really pass along all of the learnings that we've been able to collect over the years. And that is my last slide. So I think it's time for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, both of you. That was so informative. So we do have some questions, and we've got about 6 minutes, I think, maybe 7. First, a real quick question for you, Grace. Are some of these case studies on your website, and is information on your plan, how many restaurants have participated? Is that all something people can find on your Rethink Disposable website?
We do have a collection of case studies on our website. I also have a library of all of our case studies, actually. So if people want to reach out to me, I can email you, these case studies.
Well, please do. We'll share that with our members, as well as the people who signed up for this webinar who are not yet members of the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network. So a couple quick questions for both of you. How do you suggest people address pushback from the plastic industry against some of these initiatives that you've talked about today? Grace, do you want to go first since your mic is on?
Yeah, sure. With us, with Rethink Disposable, I think kind of the jewel of the program is that we have these case studies that quantify the impact of going reusable. So across the board, what we found is that businesses 100% of the time save money by going reusable because they no longer have to purchase the disposable foodware products that really have no return on investment, right? So every time that you have an order that's served in a disposable packaging, that business is bleeding money. But with reusables, and this is especially the case nowadays when you're having replacement policies away from the cheaper polystyrene to the much more expensive compostables. This really, having reusables is a great way for a business to make that money back.
Great. Thank you. Miriam?
Well, yeah, I think first and foremost, it's to focus on the economics, because that's really what, at the end of the day, legislators care about the economics in their communities. And some legislators care about the environment, but everyone cares about the economics. And also, if you're going to bring different business associations, you're going to need, with policy work, to bring different business associations and others besides the environmental community onto your list of supporters. And you can do that with the economic arguments. But I guess the other way to address plastics industry pushback is to, really focus on what are the primary issues affecting your community or your state. And that's a very local question. So, in California, I might say, yeah, you need to be talking about all the environmental justice implications of continuing the plastics pipeline, because environmental justice is an argument that wins in the California legislature and in local communities. But that might not be the thing that resonates in your community in Virginia. So, we have so much information about why plastic is a problem and why reuse wins. I think the question is cherry picking what's going to work in your community. So if litter is the thing, you also need good data, like how much is the local community spending on litter if you're doing a local ordinance? You need to know that. How much are local businesses? I mean, we have a bunch of reuse coalitions that we are helping to launch all around the country. That's an option if anyone wants to launch a reuse coalition in your city or in your county, in your state. You can contact me. And a number of the reuse coalitions are putting together all the data you need to make the case for reuse in your community. So we can delve into that more. But generally, it's understanding the food service business in your community, how much they're spending on disposables, how much money they can save from reuse, what are the carbon benefits, what are the waste benefits, all the things that we both covered in our presentations.
Right. And I know earlier you mentioned how the costs of managing this waste goes to the community, and somebody in the chat mentioned local landfills that are reaching the end of their life. And then there's going to have to be a huge community investment to either transport trash or build another, landfill. So have you seen the landfill aspect entering into the economic costs?
I have not. I have not seen the problem of running out of landfill space, but again, not where I've worked. But what we do know, and what we do like to, when our local reuse coalitions like to track, is how much money is local government spending on managing the products when they become waste on, the disposal side, because it's all taxpayer funded and it's all done by local government, and they're really struggling with, having a waste stream that is not recyclable. So, what are they spending? What are their challenges? Bring them on as partners in your advocacy work, because they want to see less waste. And then look at how much they're spending on litter management and litter control.
Right. Yeah. And that's actually a goal that we have in the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan, is to do an economic assessment of the cost of mismanaged waste in Virginia. So I'm glad to hear you endorse that idea. Another question for both of you: how do we overcome the perception that single-use items are more hygienic or safer, especially in this time of COVID, when we've seen some businesses that used to let you bring your own coffee cup now say, no, you have to use our disposables?
Well, when COVID hit and there was this huge response from state and local regulators, as well as chains, grocery store chains and coffee cafe chains, against reusables. and an adoption of the idea that plastics are going to make us safer, we really dove into that question and looked at the scientific research. And, the fact is, and now CDC and FDA are both saying it, COVID is not transmitted by contact with surfaces. COVID is transmitted by respiration, by transmission of droplets from respiration. And there aren't any cases of people touching surfaces that have these droplets on it that have then infected themselves. So that's not a transmission path. And so what we spent a lot of time doing during COVID is publishing, the scientific information, and we have a health expert sign on, and we have a whole webpage devoted to this that I'm gonna pop a link into the chat, so you can have those resources available to you. Grace, do you want to?
Okay, great.
Yeah, and whenever we actually start our work in a new city or county nowadays, one of the first things that we do is that we ask our municipal partners to work with their local health agency to try to get an endorsed statement about reusables and bring your own. So to just put either their logo or a statement or something on a flyer, just to reassure businesses, right? So that reusables are safe.
Great, thank you. And Miriam, a question for you. You mentioned that Starbucks did research and they showed that reusables were economically a better choice. Why didn't Starbucks move forward with reusables?
I asked them the same thing many times, and so did some of our allies. Bottom line was Starbucks is all about creating a pleasurable customer experience, and in order to draw people into their cafes to order more stuff, and they perceived anything that would create an inconvenience to the customer, like encouraging bringing your own reusable cup. They viewed that at the time as a threat to the customers' enjoyment. That's basically what they told us. And even though Starbucks made many sustainability commitments over the years, like they were going to have 25% of their drinks served in reusable cups by 2015, that never happened. And then they walked it back to 2%, which was what was happening already by people just voluntarily bringing their own cups without any incentive from the company. So, and they've walked back on several sustainability reuse commitments over the years. But now Starbucks is one of the companies that's highlighted in the brand audits. Break Free from Plastic U.S. brand audits highlights top 10 polluters for littered items that are entering plastic littered items entering the marine environment. And I think their branded disposables are becoming a liability for them. So let's hope that they up their future commitments become ones that they back with real action.
Well, great. I thank you both so much. It's at 3:30. We are out of time. We appreciate everyone's attendance today, and thank you so much. This recording will be available if you have not yet joined the Virginia Plastic Pollution Prevention Network. And if you live in Virginia, please join. It's free. We meet monthly. And I just want to remind you that our next meeting will be January 18th, 2022, where we will do a deep dive into the Virginia Marine Debris Reduction Plan. And then if you have any other programs, those of you who are members who you would like to share, let us know. Christina, any final words?
Yes, I just want to say thank you to our speakers today. Wonderful presentations. I learned a lot, and I keep seeing all of these comments in the chat room. It looks like everybody enjoyed the presentations, and hopefully taking away and getting those wheels turning. We may have to do a follow-up later next year to see if any of these concepts are starting to be implemented here in Virginia. So thank you, Grace and Miriam, and I know Jennifer left, but I want to thank her too. This has just been a wonderful presentation, and I think there was a lot of takeaway to think about here today. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. You'll get an email from us once this is posted. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Katie.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Grace.